feel like I have to start this podcast out with a quick OH.
IO.
Thank you, Kai.
You know,
There we go. Listen, I got a ton of Buckeyes in my family, so have to give a quick shout out to the Ohio State. We have on an old friend of both Parker and myself, Kai McKinney. Kai, we were able to meet him when he had a different venture called Helm. He was still a budding, aspirational, young, energetic student at Ohio State. Now he has graduated, is still energetic, and still kicking butt in the real world. The co-founder of Helm, a founding partner for Relay, helped do Can't Stop Columbus, like a bajillion things, Kai's going on right now. I'm really excited to reconnect because it's been a minute. And when I saw that you reached out to me, my face lit up. I'm not going to lie, because that's what's beautiful about whether people listen to this podcast or not. It's an excuse for all three of us to catch up and hang out 45 minutes, not using my phone, not worrying about work, and just hanging out with old friends. So Kai, welcome to Elevation Nation, man. It is an honor and a privilege to have you back on hanging out with Parker and myself.
oh man, thank you. It is so good to see you guys. It's so good to reconnect. We were just saying that it's been a second, right? But the cool thing is, we're still running in the same direction.
Yeah.
And have gotten a lot further. So awesome to reconnect on that.
It's funny. I was looking back at my LinkedIn messages with you, Kai, and we were messaging in 2019, just talking about Helm and hired you and being connected and just trying to give each other updates on the world and this and that. And it's like, wow, how many years later now? 4 years later, we're here. We're still connecting. We're still having good conversation, but we're doing different things, kind of different. But you know what's more important about that? We're all elevating. And that's what Elevation Nation's all about, is that we're a community of young people who continue to want to chase our dreams and make the world a better place. And so it's inspiring and super cool to read up and watch. Kai, I've been following you on LinkedIn and everything, what you're doing. Come on, man. Like, it's incredible what you're doing. So we're just so thankful and pumped to have you into the nation and, to just reconnect. But Kai, it is Elevation Nation. We do ask every single person this question. I don't know if you listen to the podcast or not, but like I said, Elevation Nation, we got to hear, what's your elevator pitch? Tell us who you are.
Man, all right. So the elevator pitch is I'm Kai McKinney. I help domain experts build startups. So I'm just a builder, and make the pie bigger. So I was not the smoothest elevator pitch in the world, but my whole thing is really about doing things in a positive some way, right? So right now I run Relay. It's a 0 to 1 product partner to domain experts who are building startups in niche verticals. I get really interesting exposure to a bunch of problems there. But the way that we've really started to, build this thing is really with that just positive sum abundance mindset. Make the world a better place, be benevolent, make the pie bigger, build collaboratively over competitively, stuff like that. That's what I'm all about.
Kai, you said one word in there that I found interesting. I'm sure Parker picked up on it as well, which is that you're a builder, right? That's the word that you use to describe yourself, and the reason why it resonated with me is we have a huge mentor in our lives. Elevation Nation would not be here without this man. His name is Rich Keller, and he's on a movement, on a mission to help 1 million young people figure out their one word. And so we went through his entire program and came up with Elevator, that Parker and I are both elevators, right? And Kai, it's cool that you're a builder, because as you get a little bit older, we can kind of hone in on, I don't even want to say what we want to be known for, because that's a little bit too caring about what other people think. I think it's more like what brings us fulfillment and joy. And so for us, it's helping people elevate, get a little bit better each and every day, and helping our communities get a little bit better. And for you, it's building and growing and making the pie a little bit bigger, and helping other people, find what they want and build. And those are two different words, but a lot of similarities between elevator and builder. Builders create and craft things around them, make a house, make a structure, whatever it may be. Elevators try to get a little bit higher and grow a little bit more. And so I think it's pretty serendipitous that you said that word, because there's so much overlap between our mindsets. And that's what's beautiful about Elevation Nation and what we're trying to build here, which is, yes, we're both all entrepreneurs, right? We all met through the entrepreneurial world and connections that we had. But what unites us, I would argue, more than being entrepreneurs is our mindsets of wanting to build and create and elevate. And so I'm so glad you said that word. I had to say something.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, it's all about being collaborative, being constructive, right? That is ultimately what motivates me. It's kind of, hey, you've got the agency, you've got the ability to sort of enact your will on the world. And the way you do that is by building, by elevating, right? By constructing. It's all productive. It's all fueled by things.
So I see you got the Columbus map behind you. I take it you're not too far away from the Columbus, Ohio State campus, given
That's correct.
all the things that you're doing now on campus, but you're not a student of Ohio State. Walk us through, what have the last couple years been like post-graduation, and what led you down this route where you're not just like an analyst or a staff at a big corporate company, you're founding partner, whatever it is. Come on, man. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh man. So this is the catch-up part, right? We talked in 2019. I was building Helm. I had started building, while I was a student at Ohio State. That was, I think it was just a great opportunity to find like-minded people. You didn't have too many responsibilities in school, right? I obviously get good grades and all that stuff, but I think, pretty much off the bat, it was like, hey, we've got a great group of people here. Let's just see what happens. Let's just try to solve problems. And I think, we went through a number of the typical student startups, right? I feel like every student startup is something like a beer tap thing, when you're going out, or a laundry service, right? Or like maybe even a talent marketplace, hey, we know a bunch of these nerds, and we've got companies who want access to them, right?
And some of it works. Don't get me wrong.
Some of them
the
works,
right people
totally.
can make it work for sure.
Oh yeah. Those are solid business models, right? It's really good for kind of just getting the reps in. And actually, that's what I started out building is that last one, the talent marketplace. And we were able to get connected with a bunch of folks around the community in Columbus. We were connected with the student body, and that's kind of how it started. That was actually the foundational piece that led to Helm. Helm was like, hey, as we've done this a couple of times, what's an interesting angle that we can take, that we can try to scale something, right? Each of these iterations was prompted by kind of a new challenge that we wanted to take on, something that we wanted to learn about. And I was really lucky to be with a team of, just incredible collaborators that you will learn. I'm still collaborating with to this day. So we've been building together for a long time. Yeah. So that's how that started. At the same time, right? Ohio State is a great school, a great ecosystem. But while I was a student there were sort of still early innings in terms of building that ecosystem around innovation and entrepreneurship. What it looks like today is completely evolved from what it looked like when I was an undergrad there. And the neat thing is that they were amenable to students doing the work, and if you wanted something, you could make it happen, right? And so the same group of builders that I worked alongside, we built a couple of programs at the university that actually still exist. They help kind of create the bedrock of innovation and entrepreneurship programs at the university. Um, and so that was awesome, right? Building the startup, building the ecosystem. Um, you know, Actually, we also ended up building a service business. We built a creative house. That was like all about just quick and easy revenue generation, as opposed to trying to build something that scaled.
Kai, I just got to say,
Shots
you
on
said
goal.
quick and easy revenue generation. You realize how crazy that is because most college kids are just drinking beer and hanging out.
Well, I didn't say I
Maybe
didn't do that.
fair enough. I mean, like, this is just, you're obviously incredibly mature for your age, and I love that you think this way. But I do have to, I'm gonna call you out and give you a pat on the back. Like, that is not an easy revenue generate. Like, oh, yeah, I'm gonna start up, make a talent hub, or I know computer science, so I'm gonna get some buddies. Okay, I'm gonna tell you a quick story now. Not to interrupt you, but I have to share this because I know Parker's thinking this. Parker and I wanted to start a company. Parker had been working for a startup on campus, a meal delivery service. So we and a couple of other best friends locked ourselves in our innovation lab at University of Maryland. We're like, we're coming up with an idea. We're not coming out of here until we get an idea that we're going to run with senior year.
That was literally the rule. It's like we're literally not leaving until we have an idea that all four of us agree upon.
And we want to.
Does it stifle innovation or does it? I don't know.
Instead of food delivery, we were going to do food events, bringing in unique food from D.C. into College Park because College Park food at the time was pretty bad. That was our big idea. And guess how many times we did it? 0. We never did it once. So I just want to commend you for saying, like, we figured out ways. You figured out in college multiple ways to find fulfillment, make money, inspire people, build stuff. Like, that's impressive as hell, man. So congratulations to all that.
I appreciate that, but it was really. I think the thing is, I mean, a lot of that was kind of a distraction too, right? Like, I'm not sure exactly what the motivating factor was, but it was probably something to the effect of like, um, it was probably like naivety, right? Like, oh, I figure I can do this better, right? Or I don't know, curiosity, naivety. Either way, it was fun to do in college for sure, and I think I did want to like just sort of be opportunistic about that time, and yeah, it was fun. So I mean, Helm went through a couple of these iterations. I think we, looking back, kind of fell into traps of like really liking to build stuff, but like it turns out you can build and build and build, but if you don't launch it, or if you get like too hung up on the vision of the thing, it's also easy to build in the wrong direction. We did that a couple of times too. Fail fast, right? You just get something out there, and if it doesn't work, it kind of hurts a little bit of time, but that's how you learn.
What about thinking like this idea is the thing that's going to make this business a success? So, for example, Parker and I, middle of COVID, Elevation Nation, man, we hadn't started the podcast at that point. Like, we know young people need some semblance of guidance. And so this is where I should have just called you and you would have said, don't be an idiot. But I was like, Parker, I'm in product, I'm in design. I don't really know how to code, but there's all these new no code and low code things out there. Like, I'm just going to make an Elevation Nation app. First off, no code and low code is great, but you need some code at some point to make anything look good because, like, my shit was ugly. So
I thought it was good.
Well, thank you, Parker. That's very
No,
nice
I
of you.
like, genuinely thought it was good. I think some of your other shit is ugly, but that app was good. The app was good.
And it's just funny looking back on it, guy, because it's like we wanted to make this app to help people do all these things, and it's like, what end goal? And so you mentioned this concept of failing fast, and all of us are in business and in entrepreneurship, so we know what that means. Can you explain a little bit more for maybe people who haven't heard that term, what that essentially means and why it's so important in business?
Totally, yeah, and this is something that my day to day is I see that my day job is just sort of walking founders off of cliffs, because, and it's a totally natural thing where it's, hey, I have this great idea. I think it's going to change the world. I'm going to build it. And, from a high level view, that's awesome, right? Like, yeah, have conviction in the things that you build. But there are, better ways and worse ways to go about actually building that. And I think the key thing is that within that idea are a number of assumptions that we're not really sure about yet, right? And best bet is you build it and it works and it changes the world, great. The 99% case is that you build something, you think it's going to work, you launch it, and it doesn't work, or doesn't work as well as you'd like it to. It falls on its face, whatever, and you end up being really disappointed. And maybe you hired a bunch of engineers to build it, and so you now at a ton of money, right? Right? No one wants that. And so what you learn in the really sort of ambiguous early stages of building, um, it gets scary because there's not necessarily one right answer, right? It's not like, oh, you just follow the playbook and you build the thing and it's done. If it was that easy, everyone would do it. When you're building something new, when you're bringing something new into the world, um, you're doing a lot of guessing, you're doing a lot of betting. It's a highly probabilistic game. And so the thing to do becomes like, how do you de-risk as much as possible as you're building, right? Um, and so, a great way to do this is just start off with little bits and pieces of hypothesis. The way that we usually do this is like, hey, here's your idea. That's great, right? What's the core promise to the user? Like, how do we just like build in these razors to basically simplify it down and cut out things that are outside of focus? How do you be ruthless about that? And then you take the idea and you figure out what like the major assumptions, the major risks that are kind of baked into it. You figure which of those risks are like, sort of existential, right? Like if this assumption, was not true, does the entire rest of the product like depend on that? And so then you take that and you figure out how to test it. And you test that assumption. And you don't need to build an app to do this, right? You don't, sometimes it's as easy as talking to a set of customers. A lot of great ways to do that. Sometimes it's as easy as just like putting up like a Wix website or something, right? Or wiring together like a low code thing like you were talking about, Sam, and just kind of getting it out there and seeing if people take it, leave it. Um, so yeah, in terms of failing fast, there's this great like um, heuristic. It's called Sturgeon's law, and it's a little bit pessimistic uh, if you just kind of come across it. It says
Hmm.
that 90% of everything is terrible. 90% of everything is shit, right? And it's like, oh man, that's not super positive. What's that about? What I read that as is that means you just got to iterate through the 90% to get to the good stuff. And like everyone has to iterate through the 90% to get to the good stuff. And so the faster you can iterate, the faster you can get to the good stuff. And then you like, build up that volume as you go.
I read through this tweet the other day, and I don't want to botch or name any of the companies that weren't part of this tweet, but there was like 10 companies that was running through of like what the company started as and then what it is now, and they're completely different things. Like Nintendo, for example, right? Big video game company. Um, I think it started as like something completely like different than video games. Like it was in a completely different world. Same with Amazon. Amazon was in books, like I'm sure Google, I'm sure, Apple was in a whole different world. Like all these companies that you know about, that we know about, started one way or another. And to our point is those founders failed a lot and failed very, very fast. The one thing though, Kai, that I've learned in starting a company with Sam and just starting a company in general is that you think you have this idea and it's like perfect. And you continue to iterate on it and hypothesize and think and write on the wall and look at this idea. Like we have all these ideas. And the hardest part is taking those ideas and bringing it to the world and putting it into practice. It's hard because you got to execute. It's hard because it takes time. It might take money. It might take you away from other things that you want to do. But then at the same time, it's that fear of like, what is someone
Oh
going to think
yeah.
about it? What if it's not good? What if it's the best thing and then it ends up being shit? And I think that is what stunts a lot of entrepreneurs who have amazing ideas. Think about all the amazing ideas that are out in the world that people think about, but they don't get past that line of putting it into practice and bringing it into the world. So Kai, I'm curious, what is one thing or one tactic that you can give a young person on how to take that extra step and put it out into the world?
Totally. Great question. I mean, what you're really talking about is like every idea gets to the point, right? They get to the 1 yard line. And sometimes it's just a matter of making that push into the end zone, getting that idea into the world. Um, but it's tough. And, people point to a lot of reasons, but Parker, I think you hit the nail on the head. A lot of times it just comes down to fear. It just comes down to uh, what if it's not good enough? What if people don't like it, right? Um, and I think you also talk about this sort of tension between conviction and humility, right? The conviction of like, hey, no, this idea deserves to be in the world, right? I think every founder has a little bit of that, call it ego, that's like, I think this idea needs to exist, and I know that I'm the person that needs to you know, bring it into existence, right? So there's a little bit of that conviction and that almost pride or ego, but that needs to be counterbalanced by the tension of humility, learning from the market, learning from the users, and acknowledging that sometimes you're going to get it wrong. Um,
And can I add one thing, Kai? I'm so sorry,
yeah.
but I just want to say, learning from users, like all this stuff is great from a business perspective. I think there's another layer too that I am curious how you work with some of the people at Relay on, which is, does it resonate with you? Does it
Oh,
bring you
yeah.
the fulfillment that you're looking for? Because Parker and I, when we met, it was Hired You, right? Totally different company, helping college kids get internships and jobs and reviewing resumes. And guess what? After a year, I didn't want to read any more resumes. Parker didn't want to do interview prep with anyone. So it didn't matter that there were people paying us thousands of dollars to do it. We said, this
Oh, yeah.
isn't bringing us joy. And so that, to me, for all these young people out there, I don't care if you found something that's making you a ton of money.
If
Is
your
it
heart's
bringing
not
you
in it,
fulfillment? Yeah. Do you want to do it every day?
Well, if your heart's not in it, eventually it's gonna come to terms with you. Whether it's in 5, 10, or 25 years, it's gonna hit you. And yeah, you can make a lot of
oh,
money along the way, but who wants to make a lot of money doing something that they hate? Or you can make maybe half as much money, but still a good amount of money to make you're able to live and have a good life, but doing something you love, you enjoy every day doing.
oh, yeah. Oh, I have so many thoughts on that, right? Parga, to answer your first question, like what is that like one piece? So as it relates to getting your idea out there, I think the one thing that is a really helpful takeaway that I've learned is, hey, you like this is not the end of the game. This is the start. This is the starting line. Um, what you're looking for is an absolute value of data, right? So you have to frame it that like if it fails or if people like flame you for it, that is an incredible amount of data, and you should feel like you just won the lottery, right? If it does super well and everyone praises it and starts using it, same thing. There should be no meaningful difference between those two. As the founder, when you get your idea into the world, like it's that mental training to say, hey, I got this out into the world and I did this to learn. That's it. I'm doing this to learn about the value of this idea. And so I'm looking for, again, that absolute value of data. I think that's a really big piece. But I do want to talk about um, what Sam brought up just then, which is what I call founder market fit, right? Are you the right person to bring this thing into the world? And that has been a really big part of my journey because I'm not working on Helm anymore. That was something that I gave a lot of my life to, and that's something I followed out of college. I turned down jobs at bigger, you know, really well respected companies. I turned down a lot of money because I wanted to better myself. Say, hey, I've got this time after college. I don't have to worry about paying rent, and not much else. I don't have a mortgage. I don't, I'm not married, right? I don't have any of these other things. I want to use this um, to its full advantage. And for me, that was kind of scratching the itch and seeing like, hey, can I actually do something? Like, can I bet on myself? Can I do something cool here? Um, and so what I was working at the time was Helm, which had evolved quite a bit through the pandemic. We ended up, building effectively what was automated onboarding software for remote and asynchronous companies. It was a great thesis that we're building on. I'll say that, right? I had the chance to work with researchers at these incredible institutions who were doing like this kind of work. Stanford, right? Around belonging and how that relates to long-term retention, engagement, stuff like that with employees. We built a great product. But at the end of the day, when it came to distributing, when it came to like just pounding the pavement on this idea, I wasn't waking up every morning like, hey, this is the problem I want to like spend my life solving. Um, and like you can only kind of like put on the fake smile for so long there. It really does get to you, especially people think about startups and they're like, startups are so cool, you're doing something, whatever. Startups are super low prestige. You are just doing grunt work and you're not getting paid for it. And like, unless it really succeeds, there's a big chance that people look at it and say like, oh, your last, pet project, it really didn't work out, right? Like people don't take it seriously until it goes somewhere. And so like it's really, you know, kind of sometimes it feels like bottom of the barrel stuff that you really got to get through. And if you don't have that like motivation or that passion for the thing that you're trying to solve, it's going to be really tough.
This is a really fun conversation, Kai, and you are dropping some knowledge, but I want to drop some knowledge on you right now because at the point where Sam and I made the decision between Hired You and Elevation Nation, we had to look ourselves really in the mirror. We were not happy, and we were not happy because we weren't liking what Hired You was becoming and how it wasn't giving us the fulfillment, but also everything else in our life. Or there were parts of our life that we were enjoying, but there are other parts that were really difficult. So we locked ourselves in a room over a weekend, kind of like what we did in college, but it was just Sam and I. And we said, let's not come up with a business idea. Let's try to figure out a new way to live our lives. And that's where this concept of mental fortitude came about. And we have been living by this concept for the last 3 years. And that is why we started Elevation Nation, is to meet people like you, to help elevate others, but then also to spread the message of mental fortitude. And let me talk a little bit more about mental fortitude. So we think mental fortitude is the thing that young adults can use to help them get through those difficult times by knowing 3 things. Who you are, what you want, and the fuel that's going to get you there. And so Sam and I took a step back as we were starting Elevation Nation. Like, who are we? What do we want at our core? What do we like to do in our day? What are we not good at? Really dig deep to find those things. And then how can we put that into practice? Oh, okay, we're going to start a podcast and we're going to meet some really cool people and share our message and learn from them. And now 235 episodes later, we're still here. And I attribute that so much to mental fortitude. And I'm not saying mental fortitude is the key ingredient for all. I'm just saying it's the key ingredient that has helped Sam and I get to where we are today. Because looking back, Sam and I are doing this and we're not making a single dollar from it. We've recorded 200 and however many episodes. We're spending countless and countless hours recording episodes, meeting guests, prepping, this and that. Hours that take away from our everyday. But you know what? It's not about the money. We love doing it because we're meeting amazing people. we're hearing amazing stories and we're sharing those stories with the world. And so if you're listening to this and you're a founder and you feel like, oh man, this is tough, when's it going to come? It'll come when your time is right. You just got to keep going.
Yes.
You got to stay in the game. And that eventually will pay dividends.
That is so much truth. That is so much truth. It's really just about like, just keep swimming. Like, you know, I think I learned this actually. I remember, right? Because I had, you know, I was going through, it's not always, you know, sunshine and rainbows, right? Like sometimes it gets tough in a lot of ways. And I was going through this sort of rough patch, I think, you know, with helmet. And I had to give myself some of that perspective. I was like I know I gotta keep running, right, this race, you know, but how do I figure that out? So I actually looked at, I don't know, for some reason I found that YouTubers, I'm not a YouTuber, but I respect YouTubers and content creators, right? Like that entire there's this sort of exponential distribution that happens where like if you keep just taking shots on goal, if you just stay consistent, if you just keep creating and putting stuff out to the world, eventually you're going to get picked up, eventually you're going to go viral. And the biggest factor behind that, you know, it seems like sometimes it's luck or whatever. No, it's literally just consistency, right? And it's crazy. Like you look behind every overnight success, whether that be a content creator, whether that be a founder, right? And you're like, wow, like this person is like so young, or like, man, they really grew this thing fast. But you take a look under the surface, they've been doing that for like 4, 5, 6, 7 years, just, you know, just pushing a boulder up a hill, right? And there's no glory in that, right? It really is just kind of that exposure. So like totally like, you know, agree with all of that. And I love what you're saying. Oh, Sam, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it's why we came up with why we think mental fortitude is the perfect word, right? And why we think so many young people are lacking that concept. It's more than just being tough and knowing that sometimes you have to do shit jobs and, you know, grind it out, right? Like you can grind things out in the wrong way, just, you know, working harder and not smart, right? That doesn't make you successful. You can be miserable in a job and say, well, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. That's what society expects of me, and I'm going to be miserable, but it'll pay off eventually. Mental fortitude is more than just grinding. Mental fortitude is taking a step back and figuring out who you are at your core and what you actually are made of, your vision of where you want to go, and then what drives you. And so that's why I think absolutely you have to keep going. You have to stay in the game. You guys are both right. But to all of your points, right? Kai, you said I needed to have a tough conversation with myself and think about Helm. You also need to know when to lift your head up, stop grinding with no avail or end in sight, and say, maybe I need to grind in a different way. Maybe I need to take 3 hours, sit in a park with a journal, and figure out who the hell I am and what I'm doing with my life. And I think it's that ability to be like, you're not giving up. You're not saying like, oh, I quit, this is too tough. You're saying, hold on, let me make sure I'm running the right direction before I get off track here. And I think that's a key that I really want elevators to take away from this. Take a step back.
Take a step back. I love that. Scott Galloway, if you know him, he's an NYU marketing professor. Super, really brilliant guy. He's like the tough love type of guy, I feel like.
Oh, yeah.
He posted this video, and he was like, every successful person that you've ever heard of is not the nonstop grinder. They're not working from the minute they wake up to the minute they go to bed. Every successful person that you know about has a passion outside of their work and they live it and they do it. Takes them away from their work. They enjoy it. Let's say it's pickleball, spending their nights playing pickleball, and they enjoy that because that fuels their energy, that keeps them going, that gets them feeling good. Boom, wake up the next day, ready to work, but then I also got pickleball. I got other things in my life. They're balancing relationships, health, work, all the things. And that is so
100%.
critical. As a young person, you think that you have to give up all those things. No, you don't have to.
In fact, those things, right? That is what helps you play the long game. It's this idea of moving balance and alignment, right? Ultimately, right, you're taking the long view on your own life. And the if we kind of go back and say the biggest function of success is going to be long-term consistency, then you have to figure out how to solve for long-term consistency. And I'll tell you what, if you're like rising and grinding every single day and not doing anything else, you're going to burn out, and burnout sucks. Burnout, the only way to solve burnout is just to walk away and like recharge. It's kind of like the difference between like your phone being like at 5% and plugging it in versus like dying, and then you have to wait like 15 minutes for it to like, right? Like I feel like that's kind of what burnout is. And so like you got to figure out ways to recharge on a daily basis. This was a really tough lesson for me to learn, and I have to admit that I've learned it, a couple of times, right? Fool me once, whatever. But like, for me, a lot of it is, I have to get out, I have to exercise. That's important, right? I have to feel healthy because literally that's energizing. That is like physically energizing. And if I spend too much time on my own, right? Like that'll affect my energy. If I spend too much time with other people, that'll affect my energy. And so like having that self-awareness, I think is really important. But Parker, I wanted to talk about that mental fortitude concept because that resonates so strongly with me. And so, right, I did this thing when I graduated from college where I was like, to Sam's point, I was like, hey, I know that I will keep grinding on this, and I know that like there may be a point where that is not the right thing to do anymore. Like sometimes like, owning up to the fact that like, hey, set this down, pull your head up and figure yourself out. Sometimes that's important, right? So I actually created a stopping rule. And I think this is something that founders should all consider, right? At what point do you set it down and take an index of what's going on? So I created this idea called a startup gap year. And so it was like my first year after school. I had done a lot of interviewing and kind of going through the hiring process in a couple of these larger firms, right? Really focused actually on innovation consulting. It was awesome work, and it was kind of like the main line out of my field of study. But and that's work that I could have gotten excited about. But again, I wanted to scratch that itch and see, do I have what it takes to be a founder? Like I just kind of want to go all in on this. That's just kind of the way I work, right? I'm kind of an all in person. And so I gave myself this year. I said, listen, by the end of this year, I am going to just take a look at myself and figure out things, and have a hard conversation. If things aren't working, then we have like just an incredible set of plan B options, right? And I think being able to like set that constraint was really productive for saying, for just going all in. I wasn't hedging, right? I wasn't saying like, well, like, if this doesn't work, then whatever. It was like, no, I gave myself this time to go all in, so I'm going to go all in. And I think that was really, really helpful. And at the end of it, I had done a lot of reflection. That was another big thing. I was consistent about journaling, consistent about just, looking in the mirror and kind of figuring out what was going on. And I was looking for answers to those three questions. Who am I? What do I actually want? And what motivates me? What's that fuel that gets me there? And actually, the most valuable thing that came out of that startup gap year was the answers to those questions, because that's what set me up for what ended up becoming the thing that, that's been, really successful and super just aligned with who I am, which is relay. Um,
I love it. Wow. It's like it gives you clarity, and it's a reminder when you have the answers to those 3 questions, Kai, you're able to make decisions a lot more clearly. You can think about certain things. Do I want to spend my time here or not? Because if it doesn't align with those 3 things, who I am, what I want, and the fuel, then okay, I can pass. I can say no to that. And what's beautiful, Kai, about mental fortitude is that mental fortitude, you have to use it in ebbs and flows. Life has its ups and it's got its downs, and the downs are very different along the way. So you got to reevaluate yourself a lot. I'm sure that 1 year wasn't the first and last time you're ever going to have those conversations with yourself. It's a consistent conversation. You have to continue. Like, I'm getting married in less than a year. That is a completely new thing in my life that I need to consider as part of how I spend my days, why I'm spending my days a certain way. And to be honest, I go back to those 3 questions all the time because it's such a great reminder of what is important to me at this time in my life.
100%. And I love that you bring that up, right? That's what kind of comes back to that idea of, this is sort of like personal philosophy. I call it moving balance, right? Where it's like, you know, nothing is static. Everything is dynamic. Everything is always moving. And you need to be responsive to that. It's kind of like riding a bike, right? Like, if you were just like standing still on a bike, you just tip over, right? Like you have to be in motion. You have to make all these constant micro adjustments and just be responsive to the environment around you. And I think I find that analogy in skiing and other physical activities, where you're really, I mean, it's literally just moving balance, right? But also obviously in startups in life and keeping everything in its right place, given the context of the moment. There's real beauty in that. But yeah, like I think the other thing that just keeps coming to my mind as we talk about this is that idea of alignment and aligning to yourself, right? Like you can really pick up when there's tension, like, hey, I'm doing this thing and it just doesn't feel right. And like, why, right? And I think having answers to those mental fortitude questions, like who are you? What do you want? What's that fuel? Gives you a really good way to understand like where that tension might be coming from. I think the great thing at the end of that startup gap year was I was able to answer those questions, right? Who am I? I'm a builder. I love just building communities and ecosystems and products. I'm curious. I'm a divergent thinker. I love just starting things and being a catalyst. What do I want? I figured out that I didn't have that big problem I wanted to go all in on solving yet. I didn't know what that was, but I wanted to be a good founder. I knew that in order to be a good founder, I needed to get reps in on a couple things. I needed to figure out how you operate a company that's profitable, that's growing. How do you do all that boring stuff, the hiring, firing, accounting, legal, like all that stuff. Right? So I wanted that. I wanted to get reps in going 0 to 1, building in these ambiguous spaces where there are no right answers and being just comfortable with that because that is such an uncomfortable place to be. I wanted to build network. I wanted to build capital, all of these things. And then what's the fuel to get me there, right? What really motivates me? And for me, it's 2 things, right? I'm motivated by curiosity for one thing, right? That's almost a pushing factor. It's like, hey, I just kind of want to see if this is going to work. Mess around and find out, right? like just see if it's going to work. And then on the other end, I'm motivated by like big ideas. Like this seems like a beautiful idea and I want this to be in the world. And those ideas don't have to be like super high-minded, right? Like honestly, building cool stuff with the homies is an idea that I think is like just awesome.
I mean, who doesn't like to do that?
Aligned to that.
Yeah,
right,
dude. But low key, Kai, you're 100% right, and I know that's a hilarious phrase, which we should put on a t-shirt. building cool shit with the homies.
That's
that
actually
might
pretty
be
cool. I like
that might
that.
be a new shirt idea for us, Parker. But it does give you that sense of inspiration. Like, I don't want to ever mess anything up because I don't want to let Parker down. / I don't want to hear him say like, "Yo, what did you do? Why are you doing that?"
Yeah.
But but it's also
you
like
don't want that.
not particularly. I like when I make you happy, and you like to make me happy.
I know,
That's
but
what,
I think now that if that's your perspective, then how much
no.
thing
You're gonna use this against me now?
No, I was gonna say is how many things are you not doing because you're scared that I'm gonna come back and be like, Sam, what the hell is this?
No. We're pretty good we're past that point. I can talk shit.
I thought
if I
we
need
were.
to.
I thought we were. It was a test.
But you want to make your co-founder proud. You want to make your friends
Yeah,
proud.
totally.
The people that you're building with, and it does make it a little bit easier when you're going through this grind of entrepreneurship. It is not sexy. It is not cool. I'm not driving a Lamborghini. I'm not going out and meeting all these cool like Silicon Valley guys. We're just like grinding in our room. It's nice when I can call Parker at midnight, 1 a.m. when we're working on stuff and just say, "Yo, this sucks. What are we doing?" And vent for a minute. Like, it's nice to not be alone on this journey. And I think that spans beyond just entrepreneurship, right? As a young adult, we're all going through these very strange new challenges, right? Parker and I literally talked today for 15 minutes about how we learned to cook, like actual food that wasn't going to make us fat. Like, now that we're getting old, it's like there are all these little things that you have to learn. And so having a community or having a group or having people with you along the way is really inspiring and really helpful. And it's part of the reason why we're building this community of elevators and why we're so honored, Kai, that you're going to be our newest elevator in the nation. Is it's nice to have people with similar mindsets to talk, invent, and bitch and learn and grow with. And so I know obviously this message resonates with you because, Kai, you started something relatively similar, a community in Columbus with Can't Stop Columbus and trying to bring people together. I wanted to give you a quick opportunity to talk about that just because I think it's so freaking cool what you guys built there.
Yeah. Appreciate that. That was fun. Yeah. So like the quick backstory is basically it was, March 16th was the day that lockdowns happened. And I know that because it was 3 days before my 21st birthday at Ohio State University, right? Um, so it did not go out on the 21st, suffice to say. I know, I know. But this was no one knew what was going to happen, right? Like it's one thing to look back in retrospect and be like, oh, okay, well, like, you know, we figured it out in the end. But like at the time, it was obviously pretty scary. And one of the things that really scared me about it was just kind of the personal stuff. My family comes from a small business background. That's what we did growing up. I helped my dad in the warehouse. We would go on family vacations that were actually just trade shows, all that stuff, right? And it's where I learned a lot of just kind of that work ethic that I think I lean on. But I also know how fragile small businesses are, right? Like it's a different thing. And so actually the Helm guys, we kind of got together and we're like, we got to figure out how to do something about this. And we have this, product at the time that we built, which was basically a project sharing platform. It was actually meant, I mean, this goes all the way back to Hired You. It was actually meant to help during that application process, right? Beyond the resume, like what projects are you working on at hackathons or whatever, and how do you like share that about yourself in the hiring process? But we were like, hey, let's just retool this thing so that people can build projects on it and share those projects, and like basically just run a hackathon in our community. And that's what we did. That was the start of Can't Stop Columbus. I think a lot of people around town, Columbus is the second biggest city in the Midwest, but it's kind of a small town, right? People know people, right? And what happened is, people were anxious. They wanted to help. They wanted a way to just jump in and figure it out. And so there's all these confluence of factors that came together. Within a couple of weeks, we had thousands of people in this community just giving
Wow.
their time, their resources, all that stuff, in order to help out, build things of value. and we built just these incredible projects. One real quick one is we invented this idea of like the curbside concert. The idea there was that you had all these people, say in nursing homes, retirement homes, and so on, that could not have physical contact at that time. And it's one thing to keep someone safe by physically isolating them, but boy, does that take a toll on like mental health, right? And we learned about that through the pandemic. Um, and so, and this was my grandfather, right? He was living alone, and it was just rough. And so we were like, all right, how do we solve this problem? So we also figured out there's another problem, right? Musicians were unemployed, no live music, anything like that. So we partnered up with, a car dealership in town. They gave us a bunch of Ford F-150s. We threw a bunch of musicians in the back of them and delivered them to all the like people who could call in for their neighbors, for their retirement homes, and so on. And they would deliver these concerts, kind of in these like bite-sized pieces, and it was awesome. There were tears, there were laughter. The idea actually spread to different cities as well. So it, got out of the whole "Can't Stop Columbus" thing, and it became its own thing a little bit. But stuff like that, right? Like, and it was just so affirming to be part of that during the pandemic when everything was just kind of up in the air.
Man, that was, I mean, did you come up with that idea, Kai?
I can't take full credit for that, but it was all a team effort. Everything
I was going to
a team
say
effort.
that is a cool idea. Very, very cool. And I'm sure there's people who got those concerts were really appreciative. And for you to be able to be part of that and to see the influence even outside Columbus, that more other cities were able to do something similar, is very cool. And I know our guy, elevator number 1, Joey Lane, is appreciative of anything happening in Columbus. So
that's my buddy Kai, for context, our first guy to ever come on the podcast. He played basketball at Ohio State, dear friend of mine.
No kidding.
Still lives in Columbus.
He's a great guy.
Parker. You don't want him singing in the back of an F-150.
No, I was going to say the next thing is we'll
maybe shooting hoops.
He's the private jet guy, so we'll have to get bands on private jets and flying in the air, do private shows. All right, Kai. We got another section for you. We're wrapping up pretty soon. This has been a fun conversation, but we always go with rapid fire. So Sam and I are going to throw some rapid fire questions that always turn into non-rapid fire questions and answers, but we'll see how good you do. All right, Kai.
All right.
I know you're an entrepreneur. You're a big thinker. What is one idea that you love that you just never have been able to do?
One business idea.
Yeah, just something fun, like something out there.
That's a tough question, man. There's so many. Okay, there's this one really niche business idea that I've been exposed to through the work that we do at Relay, right? So we build a lot of basically vertical SaaS. It's software that is like for super specific, often pretty non-sexy industries. AI has a huge role to play in all of this stuff. And there's this one product idea about basically replacing a lot of like implementation consulting with AI that I think is super feasible, and I'd love to run it. It's just I don't have the bandwidth for it right now. That's one thing. That's a really boring idea that I think is like super feasible. A less boring idea that I think is also feasible is actually I worked with a buddy of mine who's building an app called Superfan, and it is like a passive social media app. It connects to Spotify, and it just kind of roasts your taste in music a little bit. It's super fun. It's gotten a ton of users. People use it in like their group chats to see what everyone was listening to. It kind of ranks you like who listened to the most music, most mainstream, weirdest music, like all that stuff, right? And that's always been like a fun side project. We were trying to figure out how to build something that kind of like went viral, and it kind of did. But I would love to like spend a little bit more time working on that kind of thing as well. So those are two ideas. One that's cool actually, and one that is like super lame, but also I think kind of cool.
I love it. That's awesome. Okay, Kai, as a big Columbus, Ohio resident with the map behind you, what is your favorite restaurant in Cbus?
Oh, geez.
I know.
Another hard
sorry.
question. All right.
I just need to know for when I come and visit. Parker's going in a couple months.
You should come. Yeah, okay. The restaurant that you should uh, visit when you're in town, um, it's Lindy's is so good. It's in German Village, which is cool, sort of like a lot of brick, kind of old fashioned part of town. It's kind of fancy. They've got just incredible food. But between the three of us, um, there is a small Mexican place in Victorian Village, which is a different part of town, right? Called Las Maravillas. It's literally just like a tiny, like family owned Mexican grocery store, and they've got the best tamales. I mean, they're like $1.50. Best tamales and best horchata in town, bar none.
Those are the spots. That's how you know when they're like that.
Yes,
That means they're
I,
legit.
I was going to say between the three of us and Elevation Nation. So,
that's right.
everyone
That's
else who
right.
plugs in, now you got Kai's
Keep it a secret.
secret spot. Okay. Last rapid fire. We ask every single person. I am building out the biggest book catalog in New York City right now that is not a library. What is the one recommendation of a book that you have for Elevation Nation?
Oh, man, questions keep getting harder, man. That's a good question. I read a lot of books. Books are good. What is one that really you can edit this part out? I'm thinking.
If you need to like go up and like look around your room or wherever, we got time.
Okay,
'Cause
hold on.
we want the best book recommendation.
So
No
I'll tell you
pressure.
what, it's not going to be. Hmm. There are a lot of like great books about like, hey, how do you build great products? How do you be innovative? But like, what I'm thinking is like a book that like changed my life a little bit.
We like that. We like that.
doesn't really have to do with business too much.
Okay.
You know, what's the name of the book? I've read this book like several times. I can't think of the name of it. Uh, Okay, that's what it is. Unbroken.
Okay.
Have you ever
Unbroken.
read Unbroken? So
No.
it is this incredible story from World War II about this guy who was like an Olympic runner, right?
Mm.
Obviously gets drafted, flies a plane. That plane goes down in the Pacific, barely survives a crash, is floating in an inner tube in the Pacific Ocean for like the longest time anyone's ever, like done that, right? Like how do you not die? All the while he's being like strafed by enemy fighters and all that stuff.
There's a true
Finally
story.
hits True story, totally a true story, right?
Wow.
Finally hits shore, and shore is enemy territory. Immediately gets taken as a prisoner of war and gets tortured. He gets especially tortured because he was an Olympian, right? And like should have died like 10 times, and has just incredible mental fortitude, right?
Oh.
um,
Oh.
it is a book about mental fortitude.
A book about mental fortitude. Sam, that's a first we've ever gotten, right? I mean, we've had some books that kind
I
of
know the
think of-
movie. I mean, it's
All right, I'm
quite
buying
the
this.
story. I'm
This
gonna have
is
to
my
read the
next
book
read.
now.
This is without doubt my next read.
Guys, I'm
Kai's-
brand
It
with
gets
that
heavy.
one.
I'll just say that.
Oof, even
The
better.
movie was good. I'll
Give
say
me
the book's
heaviness.
better.
Parker loves to cry when he reads. So do I.
Dude,
When
I've
breath
never.
becomes air, I'm bawled like a baby.
Oh my god. Well, when breath becomes air, yeah. I'm literally Kai. Quick story for you. I'm with my girlfriend. We're at the beach, Valentine's Day weekend. All we did was just hang out in the apartment or whatever, the condo. Sat around, watched TV, and read. I read this book, and I literally am sitting there crying, like reading it. I'm like, I've never been brought to tears reading a book, but damn. That is my recommendation to Elevation Nation and you, Kai, if you've never read
Yeah.
it. Without a doubt, a tearjerker, but also
We're gonna send it your
just
way,
a
Kai. We'll
positive.
get your address
Just
and send it to you.
It's so good. Have you read it?
Dude, it's been on my list for so
All right.
long.
Well,
And
we're buying
honestly,
it for you, so
Oh.
don't buy it. We're gonna send it your way. because it has had such a profound impact on my life and Sam's life and other people's lives. We know that for sure. But cool. We're on to the last question, Kai. This is the big question. We know you've been prepping hard, ready for it. You know it's coming, right? The mental motto. The mental motto. We ask every single person who joins Elevation Nation, what is the phrase, the motto, the quote that they live their life by? We call it the mental motto. Kai, what is your mental motto?
So, you know how I said, like, I went through that whole startup gap year, and there's a lot there that I didn't talk about. It was tough, right? Like, it was type 2 fun, let's call it. I learned a lot about myself. And at the end of it, I created this list of values that I was like, hey, this is the stuff that aligns who I am, what I want, and what fuels me, right? Because I wanted that reference. My mental motto is the first thing on this list. It's a quote. I think it's from the founder of Patagonia, actually, Yvon Chouinard. He was like an incredible climber, explorer, alpinist. Happened to start a pretty successful clothing brand too. And it's this: it's not an adventure until something goes wrong. And so, okay, what does that mean, right? Like, maybe it seems a bit cynical. The way I read it is like, this is the attitude that you take to adversity, to things that don't go your way, to life as a whole, right? It's about turning lemons into lemonade. It's about focusing on the journey over the destination, right? It's about staying open and staying flexible, but continuing to work in a direction. It's about leaning into discomfort, knowing that nothing worthwhile happens without it. Finding silver linings, finding opportunity, being opportunistic, right? Yeah, and it just resonates so much with me. It's not an adventure until something goes wrong.
I absolutely love that. I think, Sam, we've talked about this many, many times. Not that quote, but the idea that, if everything's good, what is good? That's the way I look at that quote. Like, if everything just goes well, what is going well?
Right.
It makes you rethink. Life is about the challenges, the struggles, the adventures. That's what makes it amazing. That's what makes a goal fulfilling. That's what makes building, in your case, really, really fun and really, really exciting and really, really cool. So, Kai, that is an incredible mental motto. Certainly have not gotten that one before. But unfortunately, this conversation, at least this conversation, comes to an end because I have to go eat some dinner with my lovely fiance that she's made. But, Kai, I just got to say, like, 2019, before pandemic, I don't remember how we got connected, or did we meet in person? I don't even remember, but I know we met somehow and our worlds aligned, and I'm just so grateful that we were able to get back together, spend an hour to just reconnect, have a conversation, not just about business, but about life and how we see the world. And I am so freaking excited to watch you continue to elevate and make the world a better place, because I know in my heart that you are already on your way to doing that. And it's so freaking cool to watch and be a part of. So, dude, I can't thank you enough for joining Elevation Nation.
Likewise, man. Thank you guys so much. This feels so full circle. Love everything you guys are doing. Let's elevate.
Let's elevate. Kai, we love you, man. Elevation Nation. Until next week. Peace. Kai, you freaking crushed it, bro.